Hello everyone, welcome to my channel ServiceNow X Factor. Today we are diving into service mapping, one of the coolest features in ServiceNow that helps you connect your IT services to the infrastructure behind them. Whether you are just a newbie with ServiceNow or a pro looking to sharpen your skills, this video is for you. I'll be walking you through some super practical examples and demos, and trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be able to see how easy it is to map and manage your services. So let's get started and stay tuned till the end. If you are preparing for ServiceNow certifications and interview, you can go to ExamHelpDesk.com for mock test and test your knowledge there. Link of the web page is provided in the description below. As we know that by default, service mapping application or module is not available in the instance. So we will just discuss about the plugin that is required if you want to use ServiceNow. These are paid plugins. So in the store, in service mapping, you can see there is service mapping plus sn_sm_scoped app, com.item-map-app, that is service mapping map, service mapping, com.snc.service-mapping. All these plugins have been already installed in my system, and so I'm being able to use these things. I just wanted you to know what are the plugins that we use so that we can work on the service mapping when we are working in our instance. Let's go ahead with the topic. First thing first, what is service mapping? Service mapping discovers services in an organization and builds a comprehensive map of all the devices, applications, and configuration profiles used in the services. There is a service map created for each service referencing the hardware and application CIs that make up the service. So all the software and hardware components that are associated with a service are placed into the ServiceNow CMDB as a part of this process. Here, there is not only creation and updation of CIs in the configuration management database, but it is all about establishing the connections between those and having that topology stored and associated with a particular service map. Service mapping is agentless, but going forward we will see that there is a requirement that credentials need to be provided in order to enable that agentless discovery. Service mapping is configuration based, and so it does not rely on the network traffic, that is netstat. Service mapping is service centric. The discovery process is only going to locate, identify, and update CIs that are relevant to this specifically defined service. This is the difference between the top-down mapping of service mapping and the bottom-up discovery of horizontal infrastructure discovery. When we will view the service map, we will see that it starts with the entry point leading to the load balancer and then the components. In this video, we will do a demonstration of mapping a single service, which I hope will add meaning to the theory that you have learned about the service mapping, and it will help you visualize the process and see how we go about using the service mapping in real life. So first, let us navigate through the instance and see service mapping. Homepage. Here you can see service mapping is not ready for discovery. Click to verify. If you click on the icon here, the gear icon, there is a readiness checklist. The prerequisite of running the service mapping is you need to have mid server that is up and running. There is no horizontal discovery errors. If at least these two readiness checklist is cleared, then you can continue with your service mapping for the time being. Other readiness checklist includes credentials, load balancers, host, NetFlow, and cloud discovery. We will have to set up credentials to continue with service mapping, and we will see how. And we will navigate to the credentials table also to see how many different types of credentials are available in the baseline instance. So let's go to credentials table. Under service mapping, credentials, and when you click on new, you can see there are so many different types of credentials already available in the baseline instance. It is around 28 credentials. In my discovery videos, I have shown that if we have to discover Windows devices, we need to create a credential for Windows, that is Windows credential. If we have to discover Linux devices, we will have to provide credentials or create credentials for SSH credential. In this way, there are 28 credential types that has been provided by the credential table in the baseline instance. So let's now navigate to patterns, and we will see application discovery patterns. So let's go to discovery patterns under pattern designer. So let's search for Apache on Windows. I have provided a detailed video on application pattern in my playlist of discovery. If you have not seen that video, I will provide the link to that video in the description below. That is a more detailed video about the application pattern. Here I'll just show you how it looks once again, because we need this. At least you have to have a basic understanding of how the application pattern looks, what are the sections available there. So here you can see this is pattern type application, and there are 3 sections. So in the infrastructure type, there are 2 types of pattern, application and infrastructure. In the infrastructure pattern, there are only 2 sections, identification and extension section. In the application pattern, there are 3 sections, identification section, extension section, connection section. So this is where the service mapping is different in comparison to the ServiceNow discovery. In the identification section, you can see it starts with an entry point, as I've already mentioned, that when you will view the map in service mapping after running service mapping once, the map will start with the entry point. And in the identification also, you will see that the first step is about the entry point. All the other details have been already provided in the other video of application discovery pattern. I will provide the link in the description below. Please go and visit that. That is very informative video, and you will be needing that knowledge for service mapping as well, because actually that is more related to service mapping. So I am navigating back to the service mapping. So in the readiness checklist, we have already seen that there is no mid server yet running. So first we will deal with this. We need a mid server set up and validated so that we can proceed with our first demonstration of service mapping. Next, we are going to talk a little bit about the architecture of service mapping. In terms of architectural requirements, if we are going at a single data center, you will need ServiceNow instance with ServiceNow mapping activated. You will need to have a mid server installed on at least one server in the customer data center. The mid server, as we are going to see later, is a fairly lightweight Java process. It communicates with the instance via the port 443 encrypted HTTP. And you will notice the arrow goes from the mid server to the instance, and that's intentional because the instance does not initiate communications with the mid server. The mid server initiates communications with the instance. So the only port that needs to be opened for the mid server to communicate with the ServiceNow instance is outbound port 443, which is open in most customer configurations already. The mid server itself needs line of sight access to any target hosts it's going to contact and applications that exist on the hosts. For a complicated architecture with multiple data centers, multiple private networks, DMs, and the like, it is fairly common to have the mid server installed in each separate network, behind each separate firewall, in each separate zone, and all those mid server configured to communicate with the same ServiceNow instance. And in this picture you can see we have tried to cover the complicated architecture where it is shown that multiple mid servers have been installed in multiple locations of the client data center. So there can be many mid servers for an instance as it is shown in this picture, but there is only one instance for a particular mid server. It is possible to configure each mid server to limit the IP ranges, and this is where the word load balance comes into play. So by configuring the mid server to limit with the IP ranges, we can create the load balance between these mid servers. So in this case we have 3 different data centers with 3 different IP range associated with them, and in order to save time and restrictions, we can set the data center 1 mid server up to only respond to the request for targets that are in that particular range that has been given, suppose 1.1. However, there may be other sources which are also set to update the CMDB. Horizontal discovery, third-party sources, homegrown discovery applications, and other vendors' discovery applications. So that's what this is meant to indicate, that there may be additional discovery information meant to populate and create CIs in the CMDB over and above the ServiceNow mapping has located. Service maps and connections themselves are stored as records in CMDB in endpoint tables. So that's a key element for what the products of service mapping are going to be. However, there may be other sources which are also set up to update the CMDB, like horizontal discovery, third-party sources, homegrown discovery applications, etc. All those sources, in fact, will have to go through the automated identification and reconciliation engine, IRE. If you're not sure what IRE is, I have a video on identification and reconciliation engine in my playlist of discovery. I will provide the link in the description below. You can refer to that video. It is a very informative video on IRE. Going forward, let's continue with this. So the data sources are correctly managed. The IRE precedence rules are followed. If there are conflicts, the IRE knows which values to keep and which to discard. With automated identification and reconciliation engine, the attributes of our configuration item are accurately and carefully populated only by trusted sources, as they are configured for each class or selected attribute. So now let us start with our practical demonstration of the first example to map an individual service using the service mapping. And as we know that the starting step will be to clear the readiness checklist, which requires us to have a mid server up and validated and then a credential so that we can continue with the service mapping process. So let's go to mid server. We will navigate to mid servers under service mapping. Here you can see we have a mid server already, but it is not validated. So we will click on the mid server that we need to validate. From the actions tab, click on validate. Allow for all application capabilities and ranges. I'll keep it all for the time being, and it will take some time to get validated. Once the mid server is validated, we will go and create credentials, because to test the credential we need to have the mid server status up and validated. So first step will be to validate your mid server, check that the status is up, and then we will go and create credential, and then we will test the credential with this mid server to see if the connection has been established. Now you can see the mid server has been validated and the status is up. So we can use this to also check our credentials after making the credential. So let's go to credentials table and create our credentials. So let's go to credential table under service mapping under administration, and now we will create a new credential. So we will create a new credential for Windows. So Windows credential, you can give it any name. So let me give it the name, username, and then the password. So now we will test the credential and click on OK. So your credentials are validated now. So let's proceed. Now we will go to service mapping homepage again. ServiceNow homepage, service mapping homepage. Let's click on the gear icon, and you can see mid server is running, no horizontal discovery. Let's go. From the additional options, okay, let me zoom it for you. Here in the left hand corner down, it's there is a link called additional options. We will just click on this. Here you can import the service map list, define a single service map, services gathering data, service finish questionnaire. So we will click on define a single service map that we are going to do right now. So let's click on define a single service map. First thing first, service map starts with the entry point. So we will have to give an entry point, name of the business service, owner if you want you can give, or you can just proceed. So the entry point here will be a web application, because we will be using this entry point to discover the services. So let's give it a name, Fred scanning services, suppose. Owner, let's give able tutor, and for the entry point, discoverable by service mapping, because we are doing service mapping, we are not manually creating it. So let this be checked and click on your entry point web application. So here we have to give a complete URL, host name, and continue. So let's provide the URL, add. So your entry point has been added and it appears under the entry points on this form. Fine. So here is the added entry point that we have just given. What I wanted to show is there are so many possible entry points. Let me minimize this screen. Okay, so there are so many options of creating entry point. It could be web app, Microsoft Exchange, Citizen app, SAP application, Microsoft SharePoint, IBM WebSphere MQ, generic application, Microsoft BizTalk, other TIBCO EMS. Just for your knowledge, you should know that there exist different kind of entry points, whichever you have to use, which is your requirement. You have to select entry point accordingly. Here you can see the business criticality is showing under additional info, not critical. We'll do a little change. We will make it somewhat critical and then go back, click on add entry point, come back to the first page, update the change that you have made and view the map. So yes, this is it. This is all that we do to set up service mapping. To start service mapping, first we just gave the name of the business, we have given the entry point, then in the additional info we just provided the business criticality, the URL, and done. You update your form and click on view map and you can see that the discovery is running. So this may take some time. So now we can see that the discovery is done. So service mapping process is completed. You can see this is what we were talking about, that the service map starts with an entry point. So this is the entry point. When you click here, you can see it shows entry point, and this is the application that has been discovered. So this is the application that has been discovered, which is Apache server. So when we will click on this application, we can see the details of the application from here. If you click on the arrow, you can see all the connection details are shared here. So here you have all the three details, from the identification section, entry point, the application, and the connection. Okay, so further, if you just right click on your application, you can see that we can go to show discovery log, and this will take us to the discovery log where you can see these are all the patterns that has run, and finally the Apache on Windows pattern was a match for this particular discovery, so it has been classified as Apache on Windows. So this we will do in details just after some time. We will talk about how, if any of the pattern which is shown here does not match with the discovered application, discovered services, then how the service will be classified, and that we will do in the next practical. So for the time being, I'll just close this. So this is all about our first demonstration, and that's a wrap for today's video. I hope this gave you a solid foundation on service mapping in ServiceNow. But trust me, we are just getting started. In the next video, we will dive even deeper, breaking down more advanced concepts and making service mapping even more intuitive for you. So if you found this helpful, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. And I have provided the link of the videos that I have mentioned about in this particular video. You can check those links so that you are much more prepared in the next video. And hey, if you have any questions or topics you want me to cover, drop them in the comments. I would love to hear from you. See you in the next one, where we take service mapping to the next level. Thank you for watching.